And I guess it makes all the sense in the world that the Cowboys went through this long, protracted process and weren't sure what they were going to do with Jason Garrett, because if you remember, that's exactly how Jason Garrett went back to the Dallas Cowboys when they did the search in 2007. They hired Jason Garrett, and then they weren't sure what they had hired him for, whether he was going to be the head coach or the offensive coordinator. And eventually they decided, well, we're going to bring in Wade Phillips as the head coach, and Jason will be the offensive coordinator. So I guess, as our friend Ed Werder broke the news last night, to make it full circle, they didn't know how they were going to bring him in, and they weren't sure how they were going to bring him out, but now we know this much. He will not be the head coach in 2020.
So, I mean, a couple of questions about this, and obviously we move on because we were so shocked that it was lasting a couple of more days. Again, how it normally works when a season ends.
This is not how any of this works.
When a season ends, a coach has, exit interviews with all the players basically the next day. Basically, the day after the game, it's done. Sometimes it drags to 2 days, but for the most part, it is done the next day, and all decisions are made. So are we left to believe that they weren't sure they were going to fire Jason Garrett, which to me would be ridiculous. If you don't know what you're doing by the end, then I'm sorry, that's a mistake on your part. And then the other side of it is, all I start hearing is, well, it's like family there. They wanted to treat him with the utmost respect. So does that matter that they waited 3 days and still basically fired him? Did that show him any more? Is Jason Garrett walking out of there feeling any better, knowing he's not going to be the coach of the Cowboys, as if he'd walked out there Monday, knowing he wasn't going to be the coach of the Cowboys? I mean, this is business.
Yeah, the delay doesn't, in my mind, to your point, Mike, the delay doesn't change anything about the way Jason Garrett's perceived, right?
No.
The only thing I would say is that maybe there's a key here in Ed's tweet where he said the phase expected to conclude soon with Garrett not part of the organization. That speaks back to what Bobby Carpenter had said a couple of days ago on this show, that maybe they were trying to find another role within, whether it was something in scouting or in the front office, something that kept Jason Garrett in the halls. So maybe that was what the delay was.
That I would go with 100%, saying, okay, you're not going to be the coach. Do you want to be part of this organization? Then I could see it lasting a couple of days and letting Jason think about that, or decide that if in fact that was the case, he obviously didn't want to do that and want to still coach, which I think most people would have thought, given the choice, that he would still want to be. He's a young guy.
Yeah. See, but my problem there is you still could have made the decision day one, we're going to have a new head coach, and we could have had this other stuff out there.
Right.
I mean, look, people need to understand, this was set in motion when he walked into the season with a lame duck contract.
Sure was. Yep.
And on more than one occasion this entire season, Jerry Jones had no problem putting Jason Garrett and the entire coaching staff on blast. So, I mean, like, the idea that he could even remotely come back after all the things that you have said, saying we believe we have the best talent since we won 3 Super Bowls in the 90s. We believe this team is going places. And then I'm very disappointed in how things turn out. And we should have done this. We should have done that. I believe that this may lead to changes. I believe he'll be a head coach somewhere in the NFL. When you were the only guy that could make sure that was going to happen. So how this wasn't going to be the outcome is beyond me, and for Jerry and company to try and sort of belabor the point going forward made no sense whatsoever.
In that sense, we're also being asked to accept the fact that this has taken so much time because they're like family and they want to treat it the right way. Yet during the season on Mondays, did it feel like Jerry Jones was worried about respecting the family? No, I mean, he was quick to get to any microphone and say whatever he was thinking. And to the point you guys have made that this doesn't happen. Since 2014, the longest any team has waited to announce a head coach wasn't coming back was 3 days, and that was back when Lovie Smith was unexpectedly fired in Tampa Bay by some. So this is since 2014, this hasn't happened. It's never taken 4 days to get this sort of an answer. I think that's why it's so peculiar to everybody and why it's hard to make sense. We talked to Todd Archer a couple of days ago on this show, I think it was New Year's Day, and he mentioned that there are people on the offensive staff that Jerry Jones wants to keep in place. So they start a search for a head coach with at least already the presumption that there are people that it's like, hey, we want you for this job, but here are the caveats. And I think there has to be some understanding that when coaches come in and interview, whether it's for their first job or their second job, so much of that interview is about who they're going to bring in as a staff and how they're going to have success. So if you're handcuffing anything at the beginning, it's a very big deal.
And therein lies the problem. See, look, Jason Garrett's numbers were good, but because of the parameters that Jerry set up for him, he had to go. But the problem is Jerry going to be able to understand? Because, as I said, he's only done this twice, as Ed alluded to. He brought in Jimmy Johnson because he knew he needed to turn around a team that was terrible in the 1980s, in 1988, 1989. And then he had to sell a stadium, and that's why he brought in Bill Parcells and ceded control. Jerry does not like to cede control. And the idea that some of these names that you talked about, and a lot of people have talked about, whether it's Matt Rule, who didn't take the Jets job because of this, so he's going to do that for the Cowboys job? Don't think so. Urban Meyer, kind of an authoritative figure. Think he really wants to say, yeah, you can bring in some of my staff? I don't think so. If you want to get the guy that you think you need to make the most out of what you believe is a talented roster, let him do the thing he's good at. And for that to happen, Jerry has to step back. Do we really believe that's going to happen?
Oh, no. I mean, I don't think Jerry will step back. And then a lot of people think Stephen Jones should have a lot of say in this because, let's be honest, what Jerry is 77?
78.
You hire a head coach. You want the head coach to be there for a while. That's going to be into the 80s for Jerry Jones. You'd figure Stephen Jones is going to eventually take over everything from Jerry at some point, that you would think. But this is where it gets interesting. You know, an established coach, does he want to deal with the fact that he's given part of his staff or doesn't have a lot of control? Is there the Lincoln Riley or Matt Rules out there who are really sought after? Are they going to take their job because they haven't had a job before and say, hey, this is Dallas Cowboys, I'm going to take it? Or are they going to say, wait a minute, I could have some choices. So do I really want to do this? Because, again, this roster is stacked. They do have 24 unrestricted free agents, but it is a stacked roster.
Thanks for watching ESPN on YouTube. And for more sports highlights and analysis, be sure to download the ESPN app. And for premium content plus live streaming, make sure to subscribe to ESPN Player.